Buenas. I'm Vanessa, the host of Chicklet, a podcast where I share my honest reviews of books that I think Latinas, first gens, and women would enjoy. Please subscribe and follow me on Instagram, TikTok, Spotify, and YouTube at Chicklet Podcast. I have weekly YouTube episodes where I talk about my life and more current personal matters. So if that sounds like something that interests you, you can find that on my YouTube channel as well as my podcast episodes. Please enjoy today's episode on the book Sex Talks by Vanessa Marin and her husband Xander. They're New York Times bestselling authors. She's a sex therapist with 20 years of experience, and he's a regular dude. He worked as an analyst for Google before joining Vanessa on this sex education journey. They're super knowledgeable, open, and slightly nerdy, which we love. I follow them on social media at Vanessa and Xander. They have a podcast called Pillow Talks where they share totally doable sex tips, practical relationship advice, hilarious and honest stories of what really goes on behind closed bedroom doors, and so much more. A lot of their followers report using their posts and stories as conversation starters, and I think that sounds like something so lovely to do with your partner. If you both follow them and use them and their posts as an excuse to have conversations rather than you and your needs. Like, it's not me, it's Vanessa and Xander, like I feel like that's really like a nice thing to do. I also love how progressive they are when it comes to talking about how life circumstances affect people's sex lives, which I think is often missed when women and emotionally intelligent men aren't leading the sex conversation. So, shout out to them. There are 272 pages in the book, the shortest book I've read in a while. The genres are nonfiction, self help, relationships, sexuality, psychology, and marriage. The writing style is definitely first person, with Vanessa sharing past clients' experiences for us to learn lessons through them. She also shares her experiences, her expertise, and even her husband Xander offers a different perspective from a regular ass dude. No psychotherapy, just a dude who has worked through his own issues with gender stereotypes and insecurities and has developed communication skills that resulted in having a relationship and sex life beyond his wildest dreams. So we love Xander, and I feel like having him share his experiences throughout the book gives guys a safe space when reading this. So if they're feeling like, oh no, it's just a girl, a woman, sharing and how much men suck, like that's not the case at all. Like Xander also shares, and I just feel like it's a safe space for guys. So keep that in mind. The book is overall about bringing sex out of the shadows, providing a step by step framework for the most crucial conversations every couple needs to have. Throughout the book, there are quizzes, games, action items titled Let's Do This in each chapter, examples for when you aren't sure how to answer questions, and exercises to do with your partner and also alone. At the end of every chapter, there's a section titled Just the Tips. Get it? Where Vanessa recaps the chapter. The first part of the book is about getting to know yourself and creating a user manual. The next section is about the 5 sex talks: acknowledgement, sex is a thing and we have it; connection, what do we need to feel close to each other; desire, what do we each need to get turned on; pleasure, what do we each need to feel good; and exploration, what should we try next. The last section is full of techniques to keep the spark alive for a lifetime, not just one night. There are also sections at the end of each sex talk section where Vanessa talks about navigating pitfalls, what to do if things go wrong during one of those talks. Spoiler alert, the most common suggestion is couples therapy. This book is meant to be read as you go along doing the exercises. While I think you could read it all at once, make a plan, and then do all of the exercises, it does seem like too much to do. I would really suggest buying a hard copy of the book, doing all the prompts as they come so that you can take notes, put sticky notes, and make it like a living resource rather than borrowing it on Libby for 14 days. Sorry, Libby, don't hate me. I love you. I also think that if you're going to be putting all of this effort into your sex life and relationship, there should be a deeper commitment between you and your partner. For me personally, this level of work should be saved for someone like a husband. If you don't believe in marriage or don't want to get married, that's 100% fine. I totally understand. I'm not judging you, but like for me, this is not something that you do with just like a regular schmegular boyfriend of 6 months. Like, this is someone that you are committed to and are life partners. That's how like deep and vulnerable and how connected you have to be with your partner in order to make this like valuable. You know what I'm saying? It's really just not something that you're just doing with some random guy. I want to start off Lo Bueno with inclusivity. Vanessa and Xander are aware of their privileges and the fact that other people experience the world differently than they do. Couples of all orientations, identities, relationship structures, skin color, body shapes and sizes, ability levels, socioeconomic statuses, and more. And we love a woke therapist. And did I mention that they're both Latino American? I really respect the way that they talk about sexually conservative cultures. They don't name drop the cultures that shame sex or that claim vulvas are dirty, or older generations that still believe those harmful things. They don't make it seem like they're superior. They're just simply aware of the differences and are advocating for people to figure out what they want and then doing that. So we love them. Just this whole thing is about how much we love Vanessa and Xander. Another thing I'm obsessed with is how they focus on consent. Vanessa says that we're always allowed to say no to anything for whatever reason. In order to have great sex, you have to know and enforce your boundaries, not to mention have partners who respect them. Your sexual boundaries are things you require from yourself, your partner, and your sex life to feel safe and satisfied. Vanessa walks you through the process of creating a list of your sexual guidelines. Later in the book, you do something similar with your partner. This consists of red lights, yellow lights, and green lights. There are also yeses, maybes, and nos. I found it helpful to have cute, fun ways to talk about these otherwise heavy, scary topics. We can be gentle with ourselves while we do hard things, like explore our sexual boundaries and have awkward sex conversations with our partners. Now let's get into all of the things that I think are important to note when starting down the path of improving your sex life. Vanessa starts off the book with asking why we would ever think talking about sex would be easy, whether from your family, religion, peers, culture, or a delightful combination of the above. You were taught that sex is something to be ashamed about, so why the fuck would it be easy? Sex is not something that just happens. When we were preteens and our parents awkwardly told us to ask them anything about sex, their awkwardness really sent the message of, I'm so scared, please don't ask me. So the awkwardness around sex conversations starts very early on. We then are teens or young women reading magazines or more currently looking at things on TikTok. And these spaces teach us that intimacy is what keeps men happy. So we need to make sure to seem ready and willing at all times, but not too eager because that would make us seem like sluts. And we're just supposed to be naturally good at it. So when we're not naturally good at it, it brings about shame. So what do? We fake orgasms. We feel too awkward bringing up what we like, what we don't like, or that we don't even want to have sex at all. We think we're the only ones who feel this way since sex is too taboo of a topic to talk about, and that furthers the isolation and stops us from talking about it with our partners. It makes the topic too taboo in all spaces, not just in romantic relationships. We've all been sold the fairy tale version of sex and relationships, that it should be spontaneous and effortless with zero communication. The Hollywood version of sex is that everyone knows what they're doing and they look very sexy doing it. It leaves us feeling like we have to be just as polished in the bedroom, a phenomenon Vanessa calls sexual perfectionism, a desire to control every aspect of an interaction so that you can seem flawless to your partner and to yourself. Vanessa and Xander mentioned these concepts about 10 times in the book, and it wasn't redundant or overdone at all. I think it just really drove the point home that our idea of sex is very heavily influenced by a lot of factors, and we need to be more conscious of how we think about it. Vanessa and Xander share that their experiences of sex aren't sky high. Neither of them needs or wants unwavering perfection in each and every moment. I think by them doing this, it allows for mistakes and awkwardness and change. It lowers the pressure on all parties involved, like, it's okay if something weird happens or if we need to stop. Just the other day, I was kissing my boyfriend and he had bit his lip earlier in the week, and he said it still hurt while we were kissing, and he started apologizing, and I'm like, no, 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 like, don't, like, I don't care. Like, shit happens. If I were a perfectionist, I would maybe feel rejected or disappointed that kissing didn't turn into something more, but I love him. And if in the worst case scenario, we only got 15 seconds to kiss, that's okay. Like, I'm happy that I was able to have those 15 seconds to connect with him and kiss him. Not every interaction has to lead to mind-blowing sex. And sorry, I'm sure if you're watching the video, I just went from one room to another. I just needed to move. That's all you need to know. I needed to move. So here we are. All right, anyways, I'll continue. So I recently posted a reel where I went for a hike with two friends and I brought that up to them. I shared deeply personal information and shared that we need to normalize having taboo conversations. And they were so supportive and understanding. And while, yes, it was awkward, it was a way for me to feel comfortable taking up space, a practice we women need to get better at. So learning how to talk about sex doesn't just impact your sex life, it also extends to all other relationships, romantic, familial, platonic, and I would even say professional. You'll know yourself so much better that you'll be able to connect with others on a more profound level. You'll find yourself confidently expressing your needs and making requests, navigating differences and boundaries as if you'd been in therapy for decades. When you talk about sex every day, the shame and embarrassment slowly peel away, and sex becomes a normal and natural part of your life. I want to be clear, you need to read this book. Please do not think that just because you're listening to this 45-minute episode, that this somehow supplements Vanessa and Xander's hard work. No, absolutely not. Think of this podcast episode as a taste test. I'm gonna skim through the topics that they cover, so if you hear one or two things that speak to you, that means that the book goes way deeper into the topic, so you have to read it to get all of the info. Vanessa shares a little bit of the cheeseman with some of the scientific facts throughout the book. For example, in the beginning of relationships, dopamine levels mimic being high on cocaine. It's that intense, and unfortunately can only last 1 to 3 years. And then some neurotransmitters start to take over that make us feel relaxed and help us form a strong, secure, lasting bond. So now that we're secure and deeply bonded, we're able to be more open and comfortable with our partners. When you're stressed, your body thinks it's under attack and releases cortisol, which shuts down all unnecessary functions so that you can focus all of your energy on protecting yourself from that big, scary thing that's causing all this stress. So from an evolutionary standpoint, it makes sense. Like Vanessa gives the example of having a boner while trying to fight a tiger. It makes sense that our bodies turn off our desire for sex when we feel that stressed. When you have kids, Vanessa points out that parents still want to have sex just as much as childless couples. It's just that their priorities have changed. If your partner wants to have more sex, tell them to participate more in the home, which, by the way, this book gives you sentence starters and questions to ask if that's something that you feel like you want to do. The parts of the book that you're supposed to explore solo have so many sexual empowerment tips. They don't call them that in the book, but that's exactly what those parts do. It empowers us to be sexually confident. For example, Vanessa prompts the reader to think about a time you felt in the mood for sex. Try to remember as many details as possible so you can recreate those dynamics in the future. Like, were you feeling confident? Did your partner participate in chores more that day? Did you and your partner have time to connect? Or maybe you had alone time. What happened that day that made you feel up for sex? Now, go and recreate that. Anticipate having great sex. Research shows that anticipation dopamine signals to the brain that an activity is worth doing, so you'll be more motivated to do it. Think about what good sex means to you. Everyone's definition is very different, so if you like missionary, own that. If you like dominatrix sex, own that. Whatever it is, figure it out and own it. There's a cute acronym Vanessa came up with called PLEASE. Think of positions, length of time, pace, environment, activity, stimulation, and energy levels. When you love someone, you compromise and are willing to do things that make them happy. I'm not saying to ignore your boundaries, ignore your hard nose. No, I am saying to give your maybes and yellow lights a try. We aren't responsible for meeting all of our partner's sexual needs. It's impossible to do so in or outside of the bedroom. If you did, that would change the relationship from partner to servant. It's okay to say no to shit. Ask for more of what feels good instead of always criticizing what feels bad. Your desires are worth advocacy, and your partner is worthy of some grace while they figure out how to navigate this new chapter in your relationship. Do you see why we love Vanessa? Prioritize having sex that is for you, not your partner. Make sure you're enjoying every single moment. Once you get more comfortable talking about sex in a positive or even neutral way, you'll feel more confident bringing up the trickier stuff with your partner later. The book starts with prompting you with all of the good stuff and gradually leading to the harder conversations. Women are socialized to be hypersensitive to other people's feelings and to sacrifice our own comfort to preserve a partner's ego. But Now that we're in committed, secure relationships, we don't need to do that. We can have conversations and our partners can grow. We have to prompt them to do that. Another empowerment tip was masturbation. Figure out what kind of pleasurable touch that you give yourself turns you on, not just between your legs, but your whole body. Make a list of any negative, limited, or unwanted beliefs you have about sex. Explore where these beliefs came from: parents, religion, culture, friends. Then visualize yourself putting that belief into a little package and handing it back to that source. And say something along the lines of, I don't want this anymore. I don't need this anymore. It's not mine. I'd like you to take it back. It sounds kind of stupid, but taking that belief outside of your brain into a package and then if visually handing it off to someone does something in your brain where it really thinks you took it out. Will this little exercise solve all of your problems? No, but this exercise coupled with building on the positive beliefs, feeling safer, feeling more comfortable having these conversations with your partner, all of these things will start to heal all of the bad parts and lead to a better sex life. A couple more tips, which I don't know how you moms are gonna feel, but I'm gonna say it anyways, all right? Prioritize alone time for yourself every day. You need an opportunity to come home to your body and reconnect with yourself before you can connect with anyone else, sexually or not. Your husband, your kids, friends, work, you need alone time. I know it's easier said than done. I think a lot of my friends who listen to my podcast struggle with this. But ladies, if you don't prioritize yourself, how can your husband prioritize you or your partner prioritize you? Show them what it looks like to take care of you. You have to show them. Do activities that prioritize your body. Take naps, walks, or dance. Stay in the bathroom for 30 extra seconds while your child stands in front of the door, banging on it, crying for mommy to come out. Put headphones in, take deep breaths, collect yourself, and then go out and handle shit. Your kid will be okay if they cry for you for 30 seconds or 1 minute. And to be honest, I think a longer time is appropriate, but I won't offend you with the actual number. So we'll just leave it at 1 minute. Not to be like crude or insensitive, but your children have it good. If you're listening to this podcast, I know because you took the survey, and I know you're all my friends and family, like your kids are okay. They have homes, they have you, they have food. They'll be okay if you take 30 seconds, 60 seconds to yourself. I promise. Like, I really promise that they will be okay. Now let's get into bodily functions. It's normal to experience a dry vulva. Remember, vulva means the entire thing. Vagina is just the canal. It's normal to experience a soft penis or an orgasm that's too fast or takes too long. For a more biological approach to this topic, read Emily Nagoski's book, Come As You Are, or listen to my episode, The Female Orgasm, which dropped February 23rd of this year. There's obviously a big focus on couples in the book. It's called Sex Talks. You have a choice to make and you have to check in with yourself. What will your sex life look like if you don't change anything? Are you okay with that? If you just continue the way that you are? If you're listening to this episode, maybe you are because you're just listening because you support me. But more specifically, if you're reading the book, you probably do want change. The loss of spark isn't actually about the loss of spark, it's about the lack of communication. It's extremely likely that you and your partner are not going to be wildly turned on at the exact same moment the other initiates. Our knee-jerk reactions are to say no without giving ourselves the opportunity to see if we might be interested. One thing I've worked on was being okay with the kitchen being a mess overnight. We don't need to do the dishes. They can stay in the sink for 12 hours. It's okay, guys. You can disagree if you want. Maybe I'm being like not hygienic, but if at the end of a long night you're tired, you want to go to bed, or maybe you want to go have sex with your partner, like you don't need to do the dishes. You can do them in the morning or the next day in the afternoon or at night. Like it's okay. Perfectionism does not serve anyone. It just harms you and makes you feel like a failure. So like leave the dishes, leave the laundry. It's okay. I promise. If you do want to have these conversations, you can approach your partner when they're in a good mood and outside of the bedroom. Talk about the time you had amazing sex or ask them what their favorite sexual memory is with you. A day or two later, praise them for being willing to have that conversation with you. By doing that, you're linking emotional and physical intimacy. If you only talk to them about what you don't like, then sex talks turn into something more negative. Start creating positive interactions around sex conversations. Feel your feelings. When it comes to sex, simply notice them and leave them be. The foundation of emotional intelligence is when we accept our own emotions and experiences so they can dissipate much faster. If you try to fight them or do something intense to get rid of the negative feelings, it turns into almost a power struggle between yourself and your feelings. Unfortunately, you do have to let your negative feelings exist. One suggestion Vanessa made was to identify the true villain. Is it society's expectations, the patriarchy, or your inner critic? What I did with one therapist last summer was I actually identified three cartoon characters that best described my intense negative emotions so that when they came up, I would name them and sit with those characters rather than be mad at myself for having these feelings. It was a cute, light way to let myself have my feelings. If not for me, then for these fictional characters who needed something. They were feeling something, they were going through it, and I needed to help them. So my three characters were, the first one was Eeyore, which is where I would just be super depressed. And I feel like no one liked me and just like a pity party. I would just tend to Eeyore and talk to Eeyore, which really I'm talking to myself, right? Like people do care about you. You are really nice. People love you. No one feels this way about you. You're loved and you're safe. I also had, the half man, half horse in Hercules, Danny DeVito plays that character. So that is who I would visualize that character, but I just called him Danny DeVito because I don't know what that character's name is. It was just like super irritable and just hated everyone and everyone was stupid and I can't fucking understand you. Like anytime I'm in that mood, I'm like Danny DeVito. And again, it's like, why are you feeling that way? Because you're overwhelmed, you're stressed out, you have too much on your plate, you need to, prioritize your day and maybe go outside, maybe take a nap, maybe I'm hungry, like just like address the anger. And the third character that I had was Tasmanian Devil. That is when I'm so anxious that I can't stop moving. I have to clean, I have to put it away, I have to go run this errand, I have to return that, I have to eat that, I have to go talk to that person. No, chill out. Like Tasmanian Devil, take a breath. You don't need to do everything all at once. You can do some stuff tomorrow. You can do some stuff next week. Some of the shit you don't even have to do. And so that was really helpful for me. Vanessa suggests the next steps would be to make a plan. Bring your fears out into the light of day and make a game plan for addressing the worst case scenario and then open up to your partner. Can you open up to them about these things you're struggling with? Hollywood's fairy tale, perfectionism, fears, anxieties? Can you create a safe space for your partner to share what they're struggling with? That's true intimacy, letting your partner see your internal world, even when it's not a pretty picture. Keeping your guard up like you do with strangers is not intimacy. Sharing, being vulnerable, trusting that you and your partner will get through this and anything together is intimacy. Without you opening up, your relationship goals, sex or otherwise, are unattainable. This is a new concept to me when it comes to non romantic relationships. I guess platonic is a better word. I always thought that intimacy was saved only for romantic relationships, but letting people in and trusting them to still love me and not judge me is something very new and something I've been working on for the past 2, 3 years. Hurt is part of a relationship. Strong relationships leave room for repair. Rejection feels so terrible that most of us will go great lengths to avoid it, like not talking about sex, but it's okay to be rejected. You and your partner will get through that. Start saying no. Find pleasure through feedback. Feedback does not mean criticism or rejection. Feedback is just reporting back on your experience. That's why I always talk about being bad at something. It's okay to be new at something and need improvement. We'll be okay, guys. Like all of that I just described is ego. Leave it out of your bedroom and relationship, please. Another thing to know is that some aspects of sex drive happen internally, the me, and some can form between you and your partner, the we. The me includes identifying your sex drive in your head or in your body. Mental desire is when sex sounds good, and physical desire is when your body tells you it's time to have sex. Like your nipples getting hard, your heart rate increasing, breath deepening, blood rushing to genitals, getting an erection, or getting lubricated. You also may be a spontaneous type where it's mental first, then physical. You're just going about your day and suddenly you realize you're mentally in the mood while at work, doing yard work, etc. Random times of the day. Or you're the responsive type where your body is aroused and then your mind is like, okay, cool, let's do it. You could be kissing your partner, then your body responds. If you think to yourself after sex, that was fun, why don't I want to do that more often? Which I have definitely thought in the past. Several times in the book, I was creeped out thinking Vanessa was in the other room watching me because of how accurate a lot of her anecdotes are. And this was one of those times. So if you're thinking like, oh, why don't I want that more? You might be responsive if you feel like the situation has to be just right in order to be able to have sex. Everything has to be clean, the kids have to be asleep, you had to have had a fresh shower. It's important to know those things so that you can act on them in order to have the sex life that you want. Let your partner into your emotional healing process. There's an opportunity to bond about the crap you're both carrying because they too have their own set of shit. They can help you can help them, and that healing process will bring you guys closer together. There are golden rules to having these conversations with your partners. Naming your intentions, something like, I'm initiating this convo because I love my partner and I know we're capable of having a great sex life. See yourself as a team on the same side tackling an issue rather than you going up against them and their negative beliefs. Start softly. I'm sure we've all heard of that one sex therapist that can very accurately predict the success of a couple just by watching the first 3 minutes of an argument. If you start off with insults, assumptions, or if either of you are experiencing any of the terms in the acronym HALT, hunger, anger, loneliness, or tired, then obviously the convo is going to go south. Make sure everyone is in a good mood. Vanessa and Xander suggest a few tips like acknowledging your shared baggage. Maybe you're both from the same culture that shames women's pleasure. They also suggest imagining that someone else is in the room to create a level of like respectability of not trying to show outsiders how you really feel, right? If your neighbor's in the room, maybe you're not going to like really lay it all out, but you'll still be able to convey your point in a nice way. They suggest to control your tone, facial and body language, hold hands, text about it first. I also would personally suggest having tough conversations while on a long walk. I find that men are more open to hard conversations. And honestly, like I learned that as a teacher too, like boys don't want to look you in the eye. So why force them? And similarly with men, like if they don't want to make eye contact, like don't force them. Just go for a walk and have the conversation side by side while you're both walking. And I sometimes struggle with whether or not this is me copping out of eye contact or me coddling an adult who should be able to have hard convos with their partner of several years. Or is this me humanizing my partner's experience and understanding that we all communicate best during different circumstances and prioritizing the outcome rather than the process? I always go with the latter. Whatever works is what I'm going to do. Another suggestion they make is to take the combo slowly. And this is something that I've had to work on in the past few years because I've noticed that the way I would handle tense conversations is just word vomiting, blacking out, and rushing through. And it's very powerful to take it slow, listen for understanding, and not be impulsive in your response. Something else they suggest that I think a lot of people struggle with is being able to make space for change. I hear a lot of people assume that things will never get better. And I'm sure that there are some instances or some people who are incapable of change, but I don't know. I hope that we're all with partners that are capable of hearing us and making changes. I feel like those are the type of partners that we should be choosing for ourselves. So let's give them the benefit of the doubt. Another topic they touch on is the physical emotion conundrum, where in each relationship, there's usually one person who needs emotional connection in order to want to have sex, and another person who needs to have sex in order to want to be emotionally connected. It's almost like the chicken and the egg discussion. Which one comes first, connection or sex? And they actually give us an answer outside of just talk to your partner. I totally expected them to be like, oh, sometimes they win, sometimes you win. It's a balance. A relationship is about compromise. But they did not say that at all. Vanessa, the therapist, says that the emotional connection should come first. Congratulations, you win, yay! Vanessa says that that's the case because it often doesn't feel safe or healthy to be physically intimate with someone when you're feeling disconnected from them. Whereas the other way around, it's not harming anyone. So if you're in that conundrum, you have to connect first. So sorry. But now you have something to tell your partner. You have that line. of like, I'm harmed if we don't do it, but you're not harmed if we do it the other way. Like, either way, you have sex, so connect with me. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's a win win for them, but for you, it's not a win win. You know what I'm saying? Here are some steps you should follow to actually start trying new things in the bedroom. First, start with small changes. Decide how frequently you want to try new things. It doesn't have to be every single time you have sex. Maybe it's like the first time you have sex in the month or every Sunday. Like, just talk about how frequently you want to try new things. Order the things that you're going to try from least intimidating to most intimidating and do the easy ones first. And they also provide some ways to make it fun, like gamifying it and reframing negative thoughts. Some other things that Vanessa and Xander touch on that I won't be diving too deeply in are the following. There's like 20 things. So I'm going to talk about a little bit about each one, but it's not going to be like a big long paragraph, maybe like a sentence or two. So here we go. The first one is adding logs to your fire. These are things that you could do to keep the fire alive in your relationship. They talk about the bristle reaction when your body recoils at your partner's touch. Touch time. This is a planned time where you touch each other non-sexually to reduce the pressure of touch within your partner. This way, touch does not equal sex. 30-second daily hugs and the positive impacts of them. The daily 6-second kiss and the positive impacts of it. The difference between preferences and boundaries. Non-concordance, hypervigilance, disassociation, and how much energy those three take. It's exhausting. They also provide tips for having hard conversations. For example, using I language. I feel like a lot of us listening are familiar with this, so I don't want to be redundant, but it's basically saying things like, I feel X, Y, and Z, and I need A, B, and C, instead of telling your partner that they ain't shit. Stop saying the words always and never. It makes it final and it doesn't leave room for change. Summarizing what your partner said and how doing that positively impacts the outcome of difficult conversations. How hiding requests behind questions set your partner up for failure. They think they have a choice when really, if they choose the answer you don't want, it causes resentment. You have to straight up ask these people for what you need. Easier said than done, obviously, but asking it in a form of a request just sets them up for failure. So don't do that. Don't assume you know your partner's response or jump to any conclusions. Pause during convos. It's totally normal to take a break in the conversation for like 15 minutes as long as you come back to it. Don't avoid it. You have to come back. Some other things that they share that I'm not going to be deep diving into is the post game wrap up, where you offer perspectives on what just happened in the bedroom and the pros of talking about it. What to do when you feel completely touched out. Hint, hint, go to couples therapy. You guys can get through it. You got together for a reason. I'm sure you can find a few reasons to stay together and work through hard things. You have to be willing to keep looking for yourself and each other over and over and over again. That's like what a partnership is. Mental load and chore play. I think you're all very familiar with the effects of the imbalance of the invisible workload. This section speaks to guys, so if anything, buy the book and show your guys this section where Xander goes more into that. How everything affects your desire for your partner, the way they carry themselves, their tone of voice, how much gets done in a day, etc., and also vice versa. They talk about the misconception that men always want it more. That's a lie. It leaves men who don't want it more thinking they're not man enough, that something's wrong with them, and how those negative feelings affect your sex life. A list of the worst initiation techniques, such as random humper, look giver, hand kidnapper, score keeper, sleep interrupter, slapper, and dramatic sire. They also talk about initiation styles. We have excite me, take care of me, play with me, desire me, connect with me, and touch me. They also talk about the sex personality types. There are 11, and a few might resonate with you. We have the decompressor, explorer, fair trader, giver, guardian, passion pursuer, pleasure seeker, sex prioritizer, romantic, spiritualizer, and thrill seeker. They talk about how clitoral stimulation is preferred over penetration in most women. There aren't many nerve endings inside of the vagina, the canal. They also talk about the orgasm gap. They suggest to make a couple rules around sex. Everyone who wants an orgasm gets one. ABCs, always be touching the clit. Everything counts as sex, even stuff outside of the bedroom. They also have a few food metaphors for sex scenarios. They have the pancake rule, where the first pancake you make is always a little imperfect, just like the first time you try something new in the bedroom. They also talk about the white toast or mushy broccoli theory. No one gets excited over mushy broccoli. So why would you get excited to have boring, unpleasurable sex? White toast might be good and satisfying from time to time. For me, I love white toast with butter and salt when I'm most anxious. But do I want white toast every single day for breakfast for years? Probably not. They also talk about the ravishment fantasy, someone taking control and bossing you around in a safe and consensual way. So that's basically the rape fantasy, but I like the ravishment fantasy description and title better so that we don't mistakenly suggest some women may want to be raped, because obviously we don't want that to be misconstrued. What do you do if your partner doesn't change? Some examples are stonewalling, where they shut down because they're overwhelmed by their emotions. Hello, nice to meet you. That is me. How to stop defensive partners and how partners can be manipulative, whether consciously or subconsciously. They go into how apologizing can positively impact our relationships and how to recover from a fight. They also talk about the fuck first rule, where you have sex before you go out to eat or get drunk or stay out late. It gives you an opportunity to connect sexually before you go out, and it makes for a more special night. So I love that suggestion. Now we can get to El Chisme. So, Lo Bueno was chock full of chisme between Vanessa and Xander's sex life, me sharing about myself, and the scientific facts. But some other facts that I obviously need to include are those around sexual pain and your libido. According to the April 2015 issue of the Journal of Sexual Medicine, 30% of women experienced pain during their last sexual encounter. Our bodies are hardwired to avoid pain, so it makes sense that if sex is painful or was painful at any point in our lives, your body won't want to do that. So she gives a long list of suggestions to address that, and I'll share it here. She says to use lube every single time you have sex, warm up and get aroused before any type of penetration, try different positions, check in with an OBGYN, see a pelvic floor therapist. I love Jasmine at the Liberty Physical Therapy Center in Jersey City. And do not, under any circumstances, endure painful sex. You'll create a disassociative relationship with your body where your body just accepts pain, then work hard to avoid said pain. So, not have painful, unwanted sex ever. Nearly half of all women will experience some form of sexual violence in their lifetime. For transgender and non binary people, those numbers can be even higher. If you have boys or are an active adult in a boy's life, please teach them consent with sharing crayons, diversifying their playtime activities, not forcing them to do things they don't want to do, because obviously we don't want to create that with them. But like, if they have a list of ABC that they want to do, make them do B. Like, sometimes you don't get A, sometimes you don't get what you want. Like, make them okay with that. These boys need to experience rejection. They need to learn how to be conscious of other people's experiences so we can reduce the amount of sexual assault women and young girls experience. Low libido can be a defense mechanism. Sexual abuse victims' bodies learn that sex is unsafe, undesired, and painful. Their or our bodies can shut down our sex drive in an attempt to protect us from being hurt again. I've been with my boyfriend for 5 years, and it wasn't until a year into our relationship that I started to explore the pain I had with sex and my sex issues. While I have come a long way, 4 years later, it's not resolved. And I don't think it ever will be resolved. I think I can learn tools and skills to work with trauma, but I don't think trauma just gets healed and goes away. I don't know, TBD, but I'm going to be here trying my best in the meantime. Vanessa, the author, not me. The author shares so much information on sexual abuse and the effects it has on survivors, and has free resources called a Survivor's Guide Workbook, where she prompts you to create a trigger plan for what to do if you get triggered during the workbook, informational section on the impacts of sexual abuse, create goals for your sex life, you explore safety, improve your relationship with your body, how to talk to your partner about it, how to initiate sex on your own terms, get comfortable saying no, teach your partner what you like, don't like, and triggers, how to say yes, and some in the moment exercises like how to stop something, how to stop, consent, reminders, and a lot more information. So, this is something you'd have to download yourself and work through because it's such a sensitive topic. And the book even says that the book is not a supplement for therapy. So, this episode is not a supplement for the book or for therapy. So, go seek what you need. Another great resource they have is called How to Be a Great Partner to a Sexual Abuse Survivor. And to be honest, I struggled with that terminology because having the word survivor in there implies that I could have died, and I never once felt like my life was in danger when I experienced sexual abuse. So I don't feel like that terminology suits me. But with that being said, I do understand that I did survive something that others were not able to survive. According to RAINN, Rape, Abuse, and Incest National Network, 33% of women who survived sexual abuse contemplated suicide. Sexual abuse survivors are also 10 times more likely to do hard drugs that they can OD from. So the point is that we did survive something and we need to talk about that. So I'm okay with the terminology. Like, I'm okay with identifying as a survivor because that's like a place of privilege, right? Like, other people don't survive it. The How to Be a Good Partner resource speaks directly to the partner. It prompts them to speak to their partner who survived sexual abuse, details how surviving sexual abuse separates the victim from their sexuality. It goes into how sexual abuse has lasting impacts, how they won't always understand what their survivor is going through, and it is not about the partner. Not to treat the sexual abuse survivor like they're broken, and to participate in their healing process, and also to be patient. I'll add some links to those resources and therapy resources in the description of today's episode. For the lo malo, honestly, I do have one thing. For the lo malo, I do have one thing. They reference the results of their Instagram polls, and they even say, it's not like a secure study. But I just was so surprised that it was actually published because, first of all, so many things could go wrong. People could accidentally click the wrong one. It could be trolls. It could be people that are angry that you're talking about sex. Like, it's not a controlled environment. So, like, it's really hard to determine how trustworthy it is. But they said, I think a couple of their polls have like 20,000 responses. So I'm not saying I'm discrediting it. It's just you kind of have to take it with a grain of salt because Instagram is not a controlled setting to be sharing results and running with those results. And they do acknowledge that. It's just hard to do when you talk about your Instagram polls constantly. You know what I'm saying? Um, but yeah, that's the conclusion of today's episode. I'm skipping Memorial Day's episode, so the next one will be June 3rd on the book A Court of Mist and Fury by Sarah J. Maas. And I believe my friend Karina will be on that episode. Hopefully, we'll see. If you like this episode, be sure to subscribe to my podcast and leave a review. New episodes are uploaded on Monday mornings. I'm posting weekly videos on Thursdays on YouTube, recapping my everyday life. So if you're into that, feel free to tune in. You can also follow me on social media at Chicklet Podcast. And remember, if you have any book recommendations or want to be on the podcast, let me know. Thank you for listening. Bye.